Excuse me, Tiki. All right, this is an exciting time to be alive. Oh, because as you can see, I have 7, count them, 7 shafts prepared and grooved. What I am going to do is I said that the second part was going to be where I actually size these things and then put the notches for the string in here, but as usual, the plan doesn't always go to plan, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fuss with these things a little bit. Every time I twist these things, now that they have the first part of the straightening done, and they are bound tight, by just kind of goofing around with it, it's forcing them together to begin their final straightening. I'm just going to let them sit here and think about what they've done. And there is, maybe I'm just easily entertained, but this to me is very exciting. 7 nice shafts. Now, we're going to get into preparation of the feathers, feather prep. I would like to, before I start that, little note on arrowheads. A lot of times, we believe that, there we go. Native arrowheads were these big, beautiful things, but in many instances, they're actually smaller than you would imagine. Let's look at 2 points, and I'm not saying arrow points, I'm just saying points, because there is a point to this. See how small this is? It's very small. And how big this one is? You would... Some people would call this an arrowhead, but I would not call it an arrowhead. I would call it a dart point. This thing is huge. This is a huge, huge point. It really doesn't take much to drive into a deer-sized animal to put them down. What you're doing isn't allowing them to bleed to death so much as just opening up a hole in their lungs so their lungs will collapse, and then they can't breathe, and then they can't survive. And it doesn't take much. If you hit them obliquely and then puncture the diaphragm, along with hitting the lungs, that's all she wrote. That is not survivable. And so these little tiny arrowheads would fit on what you would think would be very modestly diametered shafts. It would also act a little different in the weighting of them. So like a smallish shaft would work. Also consider, in this day and age of 70-pound compound bows, is that a lot of native bows were not 70 pounds. They were probably hovering about 35 to 40. So the spine of the arrow, blah, 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 size of the arrowhead, things were a little smaller than you would picture. Tool alert, tool alert. 2 things here. I'll try to get in the view. First of all, you need to have a way to hold your feathers while you're sanding, while you're shaping them to be attached to the shafts, so they will be perpendicular. You don't want to have the feather lay at a funky angle, so you need to be able to control that. And so I made this tool, this highly developed, very specialized, very expensive to make. I actually made it out of like dehydrated potatoes, a dehydrated potato box. Yeah, try to make this out of dehydrated potatoes. Just for clamping. Multiple strips there, just kind of laminated together. Just a nice cheap thing to use. You could use plywood with some kind of cloth hinge or something like that, but you know, it doesn't take much effort to make a cardboard thing. And a good sanding block. For this exercise, 120 is the best grit because I happen to find a sheet of 120. It's not hard to sand down feather parts, so 120 works nicely. And you can just knock it on something to clear it. So here we go. What kind of feathers shall I use in this adventure of fletching? I have a whole big bunch of turkey feathers. I also have goose feathers and some other feathers, but I'm gonna use turkey feathers because I think that barring is handsome. Now this feather, it's kind of round and kind of fluffy, would not be like the toughest or what I'd consider premium. These these primary feathers, these stiff things, really make a good arrow, but these work. I have 7 arrow shafts, and I do 3 feather fletches. On some of these longer ones, if you go primitive and use shorter fletching, you can get 2 out of each one of these things. I'm sure you all know this, but there are right-handed feathers and left-handed feathers. You want to, as best as possible, match them. I would not match these. One is a right and one is a left, and you don't want to have that on the same arrow. So I'm going to prepare all these things and then just match them as far as the proper helix. One note also is when you are attaching your feathers, you can either have a twist to make them spin or pure straight so they just go straight. I would have not straight fletching, because if you don't get it perfect, you're going to have weird flight. And I'm not going to have, unless it's a flu, which is designed to slow down for like bird hunting, I would not have a severe helix. I would have just a moderate one, just almost beyond barely perceptible. So have that in your mind. Now, turkey feathers are an interesting feather. It's like, as far as I know, the only one where you can take it, a whole feather, and just rip it and break it in half without it going, you know, kind of off kilter. However, I want to maximize the potential of getting, like in this case, this is wide enough over here, I might be able to have this. This would be, you know, the one, but I might also be able to use this on fletching, maximizing your resources. If you were out in the wilds and you happened upon some feathers, you're not going to be in the same position if you could just order them. Hello, Giles, I would like to order 100 premium turkey feathers. Instead, you're out there foraging. You might be blending an owl feather with a hawk feather, with a turkey feather, with a duck feather. And so you want to maximize it. The first step, really, is I'm not going to I could just strip these into 2, but I'm not going to, because I want to maintain control over that perpendicular cut through here. So I am going to proceed as though this is a goose feather. And it's just, I'm just going to kind of prepare it. I have a razor blade here, but it could be a flint chip or a sharp knife, whatever. I'm not going to go crazy on this side. This is kind of the shiny side. This is the side that has that split running down it. I'm just going to do a little bit of this just to help ease the transition from a 1-piece feather to a 2-piece feather. A little thicker than this. All the while keeping in mind that our goal is to have a smooth surface for shooting off of here, so you gotta be careful in this step. A little bit of that, a little bit of those. There's tricks along with this. There's tricks for everything. Again, not going crazy on here, just kind of lightening it a little bit. It's been a year or so since I've done this, so think of me as a raw beginner. I'm just going to start the split this way. I wish I could see. My glasses broke. Going down the center. If it goes off, no big deal. Okay, now that I've got some distance on that, I'm going to follow as best as possible with my weak eyes and not slicing my finger down the center. I just kind of bopped it, but not bad enough to ruin the feather. These things are tough. Following it as best as possible. Kind of went off course there at the end, but no big deal. Need 21 feathers. So this is a game of patience. There we go. Haha. And I could make a low feather out of that one, so that's good. Now I need my tools. My tools is, I don't want to crush the feathers. So I'm not going to really pinch it like a Grellia. And it's just a matter of working perpendicular. See, you can do this. This is no big deal. Just flattening it. And it doesn't take much effort. They sand really fast. Is there any hard and fast rule? How thin you should go? You want to make it thin. You want to eliminate any bumps. You want this to be flat, and I've got a little bumpity right there near the end, which will probably be on the arrow. So I'm going to smooth that out. Might as well get rid of this front. I'm not going to use that. I just got to repeat this 1,000 more times. This is good. Good opportunity. You better believe it that I'm going to be watching Frasier when I'm doing the rest. Got a vacuum anyway. And there we go. Nice, nice, nice. And so you pretend you can see that it's just nice and even. It's nice and perpendicular. So, wish I had a shaft. So it'll sit on the shaft and be straight up and down, which is nice. It worked out well. Now, as far as the length is not really that important. You don't want to have, when you lay the arrow initially on the bow, you don't necessarily want to have the arrow on it, because when you pull it back, you'll do that to it. But it's interesting to note that on some of the very short brace height horse bows, the feather was long, 7 inches in some cases, and so they would actually cut out that area where the bow was, and when you draw it, you kind of push it away and get it past it. But this is going to be for probably, I don't know, a 5-inch brace bow, so I can get away with a little bit. One consideration might be that you've got your grouping of feathers here. Some are long like this, some are even longer. And so you might base the length of your arrow on if you've got several of these things, I want to have it so I can get 2 out, and then I'm going to measure them based on 2 feathers from this one. If they turn out to be 4.5 inches, if they turn out to be 6 inches, you know, whatever. You can adjust it a little bit by the height. If they're longer, then you can make them a little shorter. If you're going to use short fletching, then just leave them full height. That is the message. Then let's say I have all of them done. I have all these feathers looking like this. Then I can just sit back, pat myself on the back and say, good job, John. And then start matching them. Start matching them. I'm not going to blend, because I've got a good supply of feathers, I'm not going to blend this one with this one, even though it's like a different side of the bird. I'm not going to take these big stiff ones, the prime ones, and then take them and blend them with these things. You want to match them throughout the arrow. Now another question might be, I have 5 left wing sets of fletching, and I've got 2, because there's a set of 7 here, 2 right side. Is that going to affect anything? And the big answer is, nah, not really. I don't worry about that. If you've got enough, then you could have a full set of lefts and then a set of arrows that are all rights. But as far as blending them, no big deal, because if you do your job that arrow, you know, whether it's right side fletching or left side fletching, is going to go where you want it. And so that's that. I personally, if I have the correct number of feathers to do all lefts or all rights, I would do that because I want to sit back and admire my arrows and see uniformity within them. Keith, I like to pick on Keith because he's probably one of the first ones to watch this, has made an interesting comment. It's like, the challenge is get as close as you can. He's mostly a deer hunter, and we were talking about the closeness, and I admit, you know, on one opening day, I just opened the window while I was in my pajamas drinking my first coffee and nailed my buck as he's just walking past the window. And took a shower, and by that time he had expired, not very far away. And mentioning a lot of shots are not even 20 yards. Some of them are under 10. And so, you know, what we're doing here is plenty accurate. And neither one of us would ever take a shot at a deer, you know, 40 and 50 yards and stuff, where you start getting into the need for very precise equipment, precise arrows, precise set of arrows, so you know where it's going to go when you shoot it. Because let's face it, the time it takes for an arrow to travel 40 yards, deer could have easily have walked a little bit or moved. 3 feet makes a big difference between a lung shot and, you know, just wounding them in a terrible, terrible way. And there's no other sickening feeling in the world than seeing something run off that was badly wounded, but not terminally wounded, or wounded in a way that they would take a day or two to expire. Not good, not good at all. So that is that. Sanding block, just, you know, a box of potatoes or a box of Captain Crunch or Crunch Berries or whatever. You can make something that will grip these things nicely. I'm going to put that right there. Go on to number 2 out of 21 or more. I'm going to do all these things. That is that. And again, I hope, and because they go slightly, there's a slight twist to this, which adds to the unstraightness. As the day progresses, I'm just going to twist these into straightness, and that's also going to help get these things aligned right. Beautiful. Some things in life are just downright beautiful. This is downright beautiful. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it greatly. Hopefully we'll get some flurfers on that one unspoken video, so we can get some good dialogue going. Excellent.